catching up on the social.
A subject which touches upon civil human rights, and though we haven't discussed it, and it's not my particular area of expertise, is the child abuse case, or haute la graine, and all the associated matters. You've been very much in the front line on that. Is there anything you want to say on that? Are there issues there which, I mean, I can see there's all sorts of things which are unresolved, issues which I'd like to understand better, but are there issues there which you'd like to...
Well, I think I made it clear right back in my election days 3 years ago what my feelings were in relation to that. I mean, I think child abuse is just horrendous, and sexual abuse in particular is just absolutely horrendous. I mean, I have no time whatsoever for the people who do these sort of things. I have enormous sympathy for the people who have been victims of this, and where government has failed in terms of oversight, or government has failed in terms of recognition by different agencies that things were going wrong. I think it's just dreadful. I'm part of the Children's Policy Group, which is seeking to improve this. That's with the Minister of Health and Social Services and Education, seeking to improve that. At the end of the day, however, we're left with a situation where there are quite a number of individuals who have been scarred through these things. There are matters that need to be dealt with. There are legitimate claims for compensation that need to be worked through. Where I think it is very difficult is that in this whole area of criminal prosecutions, where clearly there are victims who are dissatisfied with the outcome of prosecutions or the number of prosecutions, and still wanting to seek redress in that area. And unfortunately, the realities of the situation are that the numbers of successful criminal prosecutions are always going to be small, partly because of the passage of time, the loss of evidence, death of people who've done this, and so on. Where I think the area really is very difficult is just how one takes things forward. I mean, I have very genuine concerns in relation to issues like the level of counselling services which are available. I think there's been too much focus, if you like, on criminal prosecutions, which, frankly, there isn't going to be further progress on those unless there's further evidence going to come forward. Whereas actually the key issues to me is the counselling, the trying to assist people to work through the consequences.
I mean, as somebody who's observed it, and I've been to quite a few meetings about it, I must say I'm incredibly disappointed that there isn't a Children's Commissioner in place now. And you talk about the Assistant Minister who's been tasked with getting the restructuring, the Children's Support Group and so on. It hasn't come to fruition, has it? After all this time and after everything that's happened, it's still not in place. The tripartite, the three departments which were supposed to work together, it's not actually happened, has it?
Well, we've worked together much better than anything that happened in the past. And there are difficulties once you've got a situation with three ministers with interests in a particular area. What you're touching on there, I think you're getting into a much wider debate, which is partly the debate about the number of ministers and assistant ministers that you have. At the moment, we're in a situation where I think it's 23 up to the present numbers, maybe going down to 22 altogether. Now, if you seek to create a separate ministry with a separate administration for children, then actually you're going to run into other problems as well, because are you actually literally going to take out the responsibility of the Minister for Home Affairs for oversight of the prisons and put them there? You actually could create a worse situation. You could actually end up in a situation instead of 3 players, you had 4 players.
Well, other places like Wales do have a Commissioner for Children, but this is how they operate. And I think it was Williamson and other reports have recommended, the first thing is, from my perspective,
yes,
the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratify it. Stop playing around with it, ratify it, and put things in place which need to be put in place.
Yes, the difficulty with that, as you know, is it depends on the approach you take to that. There are countries who've ratified that, frankly, and are nowhere near achieving.
Oh no, well,
the standards. Even the UK is criticised because through Glasgow's.
Oh yeah, well that's why it's there. So you've got a document there which lays down standards, and you can challenge your government, and governments will be found wanting. That's the whole point of these things.
The question is, do you seek to get yourself up to a standard where you are compliant or nearly compliant before you enter into it?
It'll never happen.
Or do you actually commit yourself to it, recognising you may fall short? But a further problem with that, I think there's no lack of willingness, I think, in Jersey to do the latter. But a further problem is, are the UK authorities going to be happy that we sign up to something where we cannot say, hand on heart, we're achieving all the standards? And actually, the principal areas, there are a number of areas, but one of the principal areas of difficulty actually lies in my area, and comes back to the discussion we had before in relation to prisons. And in theory, to comply, you shouldn't have a situation where you've got prisoners under the age of 18 kept with prisoners over the age of 18.
Well, there is scope for exemptions in particular circumstances, and the local circumstances, small communities especially have problems. These can be accommodated. I mean, we don't want too many exemptions, or the thing becomes nonsense. But but there's so much in that one convention which would do so much for children.
I think, to be fair to my colleagues and myself, we are seeking to be as compliant with it as we can be. I mean, for instance, the area of child work, the standards of the convention actually are very, very high, and possibly unnecessarily high.
But other countries have signed up. Wherever they still get their newspapers, they still get the Financial Times pop through the letterbox in the morning.
Well, yeah, but let's give you an example. I mean, the most difficult area in relation to that is the area of children working around family business at home. Let's say that you have the son of a farmer. Now, under the legislation, whereas historically he might have gone out and brought in the cows occasionally or whatever, he's not supposed to.
Well, it's not. This was the argument that John Rothwell brought many years ago, and he managed to defeat the bit of legislation that was going through the states then, which would have smoothed the way for the convention to be ratified. And it was about children's working conditions.
It is now happening, and we're having to assure people that the intention is to have a common sense approach to enforcement. But this is one of the difficulties with conventions. There are some countries that will sign up and never have the slightest intention.
Well, yes, Somalia has signed up for it. I mean, I don't know what the conditions, but at least they've ratified it. At least they're showing good intent. They're joining the rest of the world.
Well, I can assure you there was a commitment to do that. I think the difficulty at the moment, if my memory is right, is as to whether the UK would be happy for us to sign up when there are certain areas where we have to say, well, we're not complying. I mean, one of my own areas, the Young Offenders Institution currently has an age range of 15 to 20 inclusive, except people may go on beyond 20 to serve the rest of their sentence. Now,
of course, a child under the convention is up to 18. So
child's under the age 18. Now we are trying to move towards removing the younger end of the age range, the 15s, 16s, maybe some 17s, so that they would serve their sentence in Greenfields, not in a YI. But then you get a potential problem about what you do with the 17-year-olds. And to literally comply, you could get a situation, you've hived off the younger ones into Greenfields, you say, okay, well, we're not going to do anything special for the 18 to 21s, we'll put them in with the adults, and the 17s are left on their own. It's the practical problem we discussed before of the numbers.
With regards to Outlook Around we've touched on, I'm just going to press you slightly on this, but for my fellow bloggers, have you got any words you would like to say to them? Because after 3 years you've been in office, you've looked at all the papers, you've reread the papers. Are there things that you would say, well, we didn't get that right with the specific thing? So can you say to them, have you changed your mind about anything?
I think that I think it's very, very unfortunate that so much attention has been distracted onto the disciplinary proceedings against Mr. Power and the criticisms of Mr. Harper and so on and so forth. I mean, they themselves have expressed regret that this was distracted away from the issue of victims and so on, and I share that. I inherited a difficult position. I obtained reports as soon as I could in relation to that, and I took the actions that I believe were appropriate. Now, I understand people may disagree with me, but I think it's just terribly unfortunate that so much attention has been distracted in that direction. And we do need, as I said before, to come up with the right package of counselling, compensation, recognition of failure by government.
There is still a state's inquiry pending, which is, I don't know if the terms of reference have been agreed yet, or I don't know quite what.
Well, no. What's now happening is that because of the nature of the debate that took place in the States, where we had incredibly close votes as to what should be in the inquiry and what shouldn't be in the inquiry. What is now effectively happening is that all the parties who were involved in that debate have agreed to ask Verita, the people who did the report in relation to the tragic death at the
hospital,
to actually look at it and come up with some recommendations, because otherwise we're going to end up with another debate with incredibly close votes, because new states might take an entirely different view in relation to this. But the difficulty is, what is the right package? I mean, in some jurisdictions they've set up commissions in which people have been able to go and tell their story and be believed in relation to their story without being aggressively challenged by cross-examination and things of that nature. I mean, particularly in Scotland, they had arrangements there. I can't remember what it's called. All these options, if you looked at, what is the best way forward to assist the people who are victims to acknowledge what has happened and so on and so forth. And that's my concern. I actually have a meeting at 3:30 this afternoon to put my input in relation to that. But it all gets heated because people think that somehow government wants to obstruct this or not to acknowledge what has happened, or whatever. The question is, what is the best way forward?
Whatever the Verita report comes back, if you're Chief Minister when it comes back, you will accept it?
Well, yes, unless it's... I won't say I would accept it. That doesn't mean everybody else is going to accept it.
No.
I'll be very happy to go along with whatever they're recommending. Because it's not actually helpful to be having major political disagreements on what is the best way forward. If we can achieve a consensus of this and get on with this and actually achieve a result for the victims, that's the most important thing.
We better stop there. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you much.